from Paul Wu, head of telecom and internet research at Samsung Securities, who I believe still rates Tencent as a buy.
I do.
Yeah, what did you think of those results?
We thought that on the top line revenues looked very strong, but there were some additional costs and also some one-time items related to their acquisition of Riot Game, which added about $300 million to the operating expenses during the quarter, which really obviously, that was the main reason for the miss.
But there's nothing wrong with spending on investment in your own company, right, and building up new products, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. I think they need to spend more on these new areas, such as social networking, streaming videos, e-commerce, and other areas that you had mentioned. And we think that this will help them to expand beyond their core competency, which has been online games.
Yeah, well, we're expecting a big fall, though, in Tencent shares today because they were down about 12% in their ADRs overnight. At these levels, would you say they're a bargain at this point?
Absolutely. For the long-term holder, we would definitely encourage people to be buying at these levels, and we think that the fundamentals remain quite solid. And as we move into the third quarter, we should see a rebound in revenues and improving margins as well.
Why are you so bullish?
Well, because Tencent remains one of the strongest companies in China. It has a very strong platform. It has over, it's developing into new areas such as social networking, such as streaming videos, and its core competency, as I mentioned, was the game side.
Yeah.
So I think that the overall core businesses look quite strong.
And don't forget they're developing a news service online as well. Okay, so let me talk to you about, I guess, the internet sector as a whole in China. Because of the volatility we're seeing across the globe on global stock markets and concerns about Europe, the debt crisis there, also double dip in the U.S., would you say that there is some safety in Chinese internet plays at all?
I think that the internet secular growth story remains intact, that the internet penetration is still 40% in China, and we still think there's a lot of room for growth from that perspective. We don't think it would be affected by inflationary aspects compared to other sectors, and we think that the overall growth prospects look very strong. For example, Tencent, which you had mentioned, missed their earnings. We still expect to grow its earnings by over 30% next year. Companies like Baidu, which we also rate as a buy, we'll see its earnings grow by over 50% next year. So the overall fundamentals of these companies remain quite solid.
And they, I guess, depend on money coming from domestic customers in China, which is not being affected right by what's happening in Europe and the U.S.
Absolutely. This is a domestic consumption story, and as more and more Chinese internet consumers increase, that will see a significant growth.
Okay, so maybe a place to run for some cover. Let's talk about Alibaba, because as you're so buoyant and bullish on Tencent, not so much for Alibaba, considering it is still a Chinese internet company of sorts.
Right. We do have a more conservative approach. We have a sell rating on Alibaba shares. This stock is down quite a bit this year. One of the main reasons is that this is a company that is levered more towards exports, because 60% of its revenues come from exporters, so that's definitely impacting their growth. In addition, they've had a lot of problems with fraud earlier this year of its China Gold supplier members, and that obviously is going to take some time to work itself out.
And resulted in basically the resignation of its top two executives.
Absolutely.
What about Alibaba and this Alipay controversy? Is that behind them now?
This Alipay controversy is behind them, but it has nothing to do with the listed company. This is all at the parent company level, so it should have little impact. In fact, when the stock went up on the day that the settlement was announced, we thought that was quite odd. And in fact, it's fallen since then.